This series has been about dealing with disaster, preparing for it, enduring it, and surviving long enough to cope with the aftermath. Our last episode ended with my friends and neighbors fleeing the Paradise Ridge, as the lives we knew closed in cinder and smoke. We had no idea what the world after the campfire would hold for us. Indeed, at that moment, the fire still burned. Our next episode dives deeply into that aftermath. What you, your family, and your organization should do after your catastrophic emergency has hit. But in this episode, we're looking at a series of lessons above and apart from those centered on disaster. These are so essential to use while dealing with catastrophe, and most of them are so useful in every arena of our normal lives, we decided to call them out here. We have already mentioned the most important informational lesson, but it bears repeating here. Respect reality. Trust that the dangers and threats around you, which may seem unreal, are serious and worth reacting to sooner rather than later. Denial is real and one of the leading impulses which derails good decision-making. Admittedly, this is easier said than done. Not all information is created equal. Knowing how to sort good, useful information from unreliable, bad information is key. Think of these three types of information: rumor, reports, and verified facts. Rumors and gossip are informal kinds of information, usually coming to us in conversation or texts from family, friends, and acquaintances. They can be useful, but they are just as likely to be misinformed or distorted, usually coming to us through a chain of people. As we all learned playing telephone as kids, few people in that chain have had first-hand experience with what they're describing. And the personal biases of everyone along the way could mean that by the time it reaches you, you're hearing a story with no true information at all. Reports are something you might get from news media or an official, like a first responder. They may turn out to be inaccurate or incomplete, but the person relaying the information should have tried to verify it first. Remember that word, verify. In fact, this is the reason some journalists are called reporters. Their job is to dispassionately distill the important facts from reliable, named sources. Depending on the news organization, they still may focus on the most interesting facts to keep your attention, but the more reputable news agencies will try to give you the most relevant facts in times of danger. Verified facts are just what they sound like. Known realities, verified, proven, and thoroughly established by experts, recording instruments, and those who experienced or witnessed them firsthand. Naturally, this process takes a while. In an emergency, we usually have to operate without verified facts. So, what do you do? As danger approaches, what is your first decision to bring you and yours to safety? You strike a balance between these two concepts. Get as much good information as possible, but also accept that you will always want to know more. From friends, co-workers, the news media, emergency responders, learn as much as you can. Find out how much time you have before you must act. And this is a good place to remind you of the first responder's maxim. If you think maybe you should evacuate, chances are you should have left already. Err on the side of going sooner rather than later. Because of this, you will have to act before you have learned everything you want to know. This is not a failure, but respecting reality and doing your best. Accept it and move on. How can you quickly sift information to get what's useful? You'll have to weigh a spray of information from family, neighbors and friends, texts, social media, governmental announcements, and news reports. Remember that good information is verified, and verification takes time. Bad information spreads as fast as people can talk, text, or misunderstand. Because of this, it's likely bad information will always reach you before good information does.
The world has changed drastically in regards to the amount of information that people demand, the speed with which they get it, and the accuracy that they expect. And unfortunately, those can be incongruent concepts. And I think people have to understand that in these very complex and dynamic situations, there are things that are unknowable, and the preliminary information that we are able to provide is certainly subject to change based on further analysis. And it's not because we're trying to hide something. It's not because we're dealing with people who are inept or not capable of doing the job. It's that we're dealing with very complex situations that sometimes take time to ultimately get to the bottom of.
Here's an asset so good I wanted to give it a special mention. It's called the Breaking News Consumer's Handbook, created by On the Media from New York Public Radio. Among their suggestions, in the early stages of any event, even reliable sources will report incorrect or incomplete information. Check multiple sources. Different news organizations may send reporters to different places and interview different people. Checking on more than one source means you get a fuller picture. Look for news sources close to the incident, with reporters on or near the scene. They have closest contact with eyewitnesses and may be witnessing events themselves, and may better understand local geography and nuances. Be wary of anonymous sources and second and third hand information, and try not to be the source of unreliable information. Big news brings out big fakers and photoshoppers. Be careful what you share online.
We've also, I think, in many respects, lost the ability to be critical thinkers, analytical in our response to the information that we get. And so sometimes this idea of just sharing it or moving it down the road without going, wait a second, does this make sense, or is this really true? There's no quality control, right, in the kind of information that gets out there. And as a result of that, I think people get bombarded with a lot of misinformation or information, that's taken out of context.
That brings us to the cloud that now accompanies most major events: conspiracy theories. When any event has a terrible impact, hurt survivors and frightened witnesses want to know why bad things happen. It's a rational impulse, but some people's understanding is so affected by pain and fear they begin to believe and share explanations with no basis in truth. And some flat out make stuff up. Only hours after the campfire began, I heard the first conspiracy theories spread by people watching the news from thousands of miles away. I had seen the things they were talking about with my own eyes. It was clear to me that some of them were just making things up, just to be involved in the big news story of the day.
There was a guy from the East Coast who sent a letter demanding that I tell the truth about, I think you probably heard that the lasers that set the campfire, and the children that were killed, and that we were covering things up, and he was going to come and arrest me if I didn't tell everybody the truth about what was going on. So it's just, I think, when you have a big event like that, the 9/11 thing, right? There's going to be the people who have those conspiracy theories, and then they're much more capable of connecting with other like-minded individuals, and I think that creates a bit of an echo chamber in and of itself, right?
Even without the malice of conspiracy theories, the emotional turmoil of disasters breeds rumors. Not only are people desperate to get information in a disaster, they're desperate to give it. Here's something we all experienced in the campfire. This is Paradise Town Hall as it looks today. Here, is Ace Hardware. Here is Paradise High School. They are all still standing. On the day of the fire, according to rumors and social media, they were all destroyed. In the chaos, they were surrounded by fire and looked ready to burn. Passing evacuees, fearful, grief-stricken, reported they had all burned. But what they saw was these places threatened, and finished the story with assumptions. Even for the most reasonable of people, emotions breed rumors.
But perhaps we can inspire people in the community who do have the ability to broadcast information or potentially misinformation to be a little bit more critical in their thought. I think one of the things, especially on social media, that I see is that the filter that people have seems to evaporate, and they will make comments or provide information or opinions about things not based on any analysis, but just based on the thought that popped into their head. And then that creates the problem.
For good or ill, the days when news organizations alone informed the public with confirmed reports are gone. In an era when our personal postings on social media may get as much attention as CNN, Fox News, or the New York Times, every one of us has the power to fill the public's awareness. We should only share what we can show is true, and hold back from filling our community's conversation with rumors, irresponsible speculation, conspiracy theories, bad information. So take care before you share. But I think my friends on the Ridge have a better way to say it. Don't stir up shit. The thing is, disasters humble us all. We are at the mercy of Mother Nature. The stakes of what we say and how we act are higher, so we would do well to take a step back before we share more than we really know. This goes double for public officials. Statements public officials give during tragic events may be the most important communications of their careers. After reading through the history of dozens of tragedies, from World War II to 9/11 to the Camp Fire, it's become clear to me that the best way to communicate is too often shunned by leaders. It's to admit human frailty, admit that we and our information are imperfect. Don't sugarcoat it or cheerlead. Give it to us straight. That way, civilians and public officials alike are going through it together, all on the same page of reality. One thing I've seen in the most respected leaders during these events, they show some humility and authentic emotion amid the turmoil. Now, I return to Corey Honey, the sheriff of Butte County during the Oroville Dam catastrophe and the Camp Fire disaster. The reason I'm highlighting him here so much in this segment is because he might be the best person I've seen in any disaster at putting this humility and authenticity into practice.
It was an extraordinarily daunting task for us, one, to understand what was going on, trying to craft a message that is accurate, not only in terms of describing the threat, but what the response to that threat is, takes time and can be somewhat difficult, especially as the situation is evolving as you're crafting that message. And then trying to message that across multiple platforms, because nobody pays attention to one specific platform. And so you're trying to message that across social media and traditional media and our emergency mass notification systems, which are also impaired by cell phone towers going down, electricity going down, the network being clogged. And so your mechanisms of getting that information to people in a timely fashion are impaired. And so you're left with this situation where you are trying to put out as accurate of information as you possibly can, but there's no way to verify or guarantee 100% accuracy when you're trying to get it out in a way that satisfies people's desire and need for that information. What I think that people have to come to understand, if there is a demand for information very quickly, what comes with that is the potential that the information is not going to be completely accurate or going to be subject to change going forward. When we would hold our 6 o'clock briefing, I always began my briefing with, "Good evening, everybody. My name is Corey Honing, and I am the sheriff and coroner for the County of Butte. I'll begin my comments as I have done every night since this event began. We're dealing with a very dynamic situation that is rapidly evolving. The information that I have for you tonight is based on the best information I have available today. The situation continues to change, and anything that I tell you tonight is subject to clarification or revision if new information comes in." And I was always trying to set that expectation and let people know.
I'll say this for myself. It was immensely comforting to see those dealing with this on the front line talking frankly and soberly about the situation we were all in made it clear the best possible human efforts were being made to react to the tragedy that had engulfed us all. There was no cheerleading, no happy talk, no well-intentioned efforts to mislead us in the hopes of making our struggle easier to bear, which misinformation never does. Because as we will see in the final 2 chapters of this story, dealing with catastrophe is probably the hardest thing you will ever do. But it is something humans can do. So even in the grimness of your situation, there is real hope, even when it might be hard to see.